Very important day today where we have Dr. Nicholas Sutton sharing what Dharma is, and there's absolutely no greater person. So Prachi, could you start with the prayer, please?
Yes, sure. May I become at all times, both now and forever, a protector of those without protection, a guide for those who have lost their way, a ship for those with oceans to cross, a bridge for those with rivers to cross, a sanctuary for those in danger, a lamp for those without light, a place of refuge for those who lack shelter, and a servant to all in need, for as long as space endures and for as long as living beings remain. Until then, may I too abide to dispel the misery of the world.
That's beautiful. Thank you. So, dear friends, today is very special for me and for all of us. We have Dr. Nicholas Sutton, who will be speaking shortly on Dharma. And I just want to share few comments with you, that this is one of the most incredible human beings I've ever met. Very special soul, very dear to me. You know, if I speak for too long, I might get tears in my eyes, you know, because he's very dear and special. And you know, many people speak on Hinduism and Dharma and you know, around the world, but I find that the humanitarian side is sometimes lacking, or you know, that human element gets lost and that is actually the essence of Sanatana Dharma and the teaching. So I feel that Nick represents that in a way that is so beautiful, and especially in the academic world, you'll find very few people who can, you know, share the real essence of Dharma in that way. I'd also share that he's done a PhD on the Mahabharata, and his book is also wonderful. Not many people have even read the Mahabharata, let alone done PhD on it. And he's done a profound amount of courses that are with the Oxford Center for Hindu Studies that I recommend everybody could have a look at online, studying this ancient wisdom and teachings in a very wonderful way, at a low cost, very accessible. And a lot of the two major influences for the formation of Go Dharmic has been the Oxford Center for Hindu Studies, studying with Dr. Nick Sutton, and Neem Karoli Baba. So if I was to share those two major influences, it's these, and those two rivers meet at the same place, which is love all, feed all, serve all, be a good human being, be the best human being you can be, this essence of Dharma that we find. So I think we're going to explore that in detail. I'll also, you know, little bit of self-promotion, if you like, from all of us, that, you know, we have these three wonderful books together. Dr. Nick Sutton and I have put together. One is called Power of Dharma, which I think some of the material, some of the ideas will probably be covered by Nick today. Two is Pearls of Wisdom from Hinduism, and most recently the Guide to the Hanuman Chalisa, Moving Mountains. All three books we've written together, and they're very you know, labors of love, and sharing the inner ideas of Sanatana Dharma, the universal expression of love and compassion. And I think that's going to be, you know, what you'll receive today. So please do open your eyes and ears and hearts towards what Nick's going to be sharing today. I certainly will be, and I hope you all will benefit from it as much as I will. So Nick, if it's okay, I'll pass over to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Very kind words. What I was thinking of speaking about, and it's quite a while since I've spoken, so I have to get myself back in the groove. Go Dharmic. Dharmic is, of course, an anglicization of a Sanskrit word. It means, and Go Dharmic means move your life somewhat closer to the ideal of Dharma, Go Dharmic. So it seemed appropriate to consider what we mean by Dharma. Now, I've studied Dharma. Dharma essentially means what is the right thing to do, what a thing is, what makes a thing what it is. And the whole world, in a sense, is guided by Dharma. It's the universal order. Just as the sun is shining out there, so that's why my face is sort of half light, half black, because the sun rose in the morning, and I know that around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the sun will be gone again. If I look in my garden, I can see a fig tree, and I know that the leaves will gradually turn yellow and fall, and then they'll come again in the spring and they'll produce more figs, because that's Dharma. It's the order of the universe. It's what defines a thing as what it is. So the Dharma of the sun is light and heat. The Dharma of fire likewise is light and heat, because if it didn't have light and heat, it wouldn't be the sun, it wouldn't be fire. But with human beings, Dharma is rather different, because unlike other objects, other living beings in the world, human beings have a choice to follow Dharma or to avoid Dharma. And Dharma means then essentially what it is to be human, to be fully human. That is Dharma. And then we have in English the words humanity, which means to be genteel, kind, giving towards others. That is humane. So that's what it means to be human. Now, Dharma for human beings is defined in a number of different ways, and different individuals will see Dharma in different ways. And if we break it down, we can perhaps arrive at a number of categories which define Dharma as it's understood by different people. And I suppose the first, and in the Indian tradition, the oldest definition of Dharma was the religious ritual. And for many people, what it means to be a proper human being, to live their lives according to codes of proper conduct, is to perform religious rituals, just as in Christianity or Catholic and Anglican Christianity, it's the Mass, which is the ritual. And then in Islam, it's the 5 daily prayers, which is the ritual. In Hinduism, it's originally it was the Vedic fire sacrifice, making offerings into the fire. Later, it became worship in the temple, worship of images. So that is one consideration, one definition that one might receive of Dharma. Another, a second, if you like, and I'm going to give 5 possible definitions, is to follow the injunction of sacred texts, because most of the major religions of the world have sacred texts which they regard as authoritative. I was reading in the paper the other day that the new Speaker of the House of Representatives was speaking out against any expansion of gay rights. And when he was opposed, he said, look it up, it's all in the Bible, as if that then concluded the argument, because the Bible is the absolute authority. And in Islam, of course, you have the Sharia law, which governs how people live. And in Hinduism also, there's a huge body of literature known as Dharma Shastra, which is codes of conduct for different sections of society, for men and for women. And as I glance over to my bookshelf over there, I can see about this much of volumes of the history of Dharma Shastra. It's voluminous bodies of work. Perhaps the best known of these is the Manusmriti, a couple of copies of that, and it just gives codes and rules of conduct, many of which are of no relevance in the modern world, some of which are, I think, we would find to be pernicious. There was a case back in the 1920s when Mahatma Gandhi was campaigning for the remarriage of widows, because girls were married then at a very young age, 12, 13, and very often they became widowed not long afterwards, and they weren't then allowed to remarry. And when Gandhi was campaigning to allow these girls to remarry and have a fuller life, people were quoting to him the Manu Smriti, and he made the point: these texts, if what they say is in opposition to my inner sense of rightness and justice and morality, then what must be set aside is the sacred text, not I won't set aside my own conscience, if you like. And I think that's quite an interesting attitude to take. And I think what it means is that in India and amongst diaspora Hindu communities, texts like the Manu Smriti are very little known. That's not to say they haven't been influential, because the caste rules are still applied as laid down, not to the same degree. But what I'm saying is that although the book itself, the sacred text, is no longer widely known or read, it has resonances still coming into the 21st century and need further reform, as has been advocated by campaigners like Narayan Guru, Mahatma Gandhi, etc., Swami Vivekananda, looking to reform and change them. But nonetheless, a second definition of Dharma for many people in the world, beyond the Hindu world as well, would be the injunction of the sacred text. So that's a third. The third category of Dharma, which I would draw attention to, is social responsibilities. Now, in the ancient Indian texts, this is often defined in terms of your social class and your social duty, so that there were 4 original social classes, and the idea was that these were the Brahmins, the priests and teachers, the Kshatriyas, the kings, rulers, military personnel, Vaishyas, who were business and agriculturalists, and Shudras, who were skilled artisans, workers there. Now, quite clearly, and these duties are laid out in texts such as the Bhagavad Gita and in the Mahabharata and elsewhere, quite clearly. This idea of there being 4 social classes is no longer relevant. It doesn't apply to a modern society where we've got a different economic system and everything. But I think the underlying principle was performing duty not just for oneself, but for the benefit of the whole society, keeping an ordered, prosperous society, so that we're not just individuals in the world, but we have a responsibility to wider society, for the welfare of all in our community, our nation, etc. And also, perhaps at a smaller level, we also have a responsibility to our relatives and family members. Those of us who have children have a responsibility, a familial responsibility, to ensure the welfare of those children. And if we have parents still living, we have a responsibility towards those parents to ensure their welfare as well. So these wider social responsibilities that are incumbent upon us, they are also a part of Dharma. Now, the 4th category I give is what is called, what is called in the text, the Sanatana Dharma, or the Sadharana Dharma, which means it applies to everybody at all times, in all situations, as far as possible. And that is what we probably think of most as Dharma. And I'll read just a few verses from Pearls of Wisdom from Hinduism, which we find that definition of Sanatana Dharma. I should have done this before. Okay, this is a verse from the Mahabharata. I'll just read the English translation. Now, I will speak about what is established as the characteristic mark of Dharma. Ahimsa is the characteristic mark of Dharma, whilst himsa is the characteristic of adharma. So what it means there is that the fundamental quality, the words lakshana, that defines Dharma is ahimsa. And ahimsa means literally not harming. But as the Linga Puran says, that doesn't mean that we just avoid actions ourselves which are harmful, but we also must act towards others as we would act towards ourselves, and showing acts of kindness. Because in a sense, if you are aware anywhere in the world of someone who is in danger or in harm, then, and you don't help them, that is, you in a sense indirectly harming them. So ahimsa means action, positive action, dharmic action in order to help people. Ahimsa is not just a negative avoidance of harmful activities, it's positive activities, such as all of you are doing. That is ahimsa as well. And that is defined as the very essence of Dharma. Let me read another one. Excuse me. Yes, sorry, I found it at last. I should have done this beforehand. It says, ahimsa, truthfulness, remaining free from anger, and charity are the four practices you must adhere to. This is the Sanatana Dharma. So what I'm saying is that Dharma is defined also, the Sanatana Dharma, the Dharma that's universal for all people at all times, are these acts of kindness, goodwill, helping other people, charity, trying to ensure that the world is as free of suffering as it can possibly be. And when we look at the world today, we can see that there's so much harm, so much suffering in the world, not just in the wars that are taking place, but also people who are hungry, children who go to bed without enough to eat. All these things, food banks people need in order to feed themselves and their family. And I saw that post in about Go Dharmic feeding children in Lagos in Nigeria, and that made me feel very joyful. Think that all those children are not going to go to sleep tonight hungry. And also the books and the libraries that Go Dharmic has established in India. I was there when we did one in Kerala, two in Kerala actually. And such a wonderful thing, giving those children who otherwise wouldn't have those opportunities. That is the Sanatana Dharma. And I think it's true to say, whilst rituals, sacred texts, even social responsibilities, maybe they're relative Dharma, the Sanatana Dharma is the absolute Dharma. It's the very essence of Dharma, Dharma Lakshana, as the Mahabharata said, which is that ahimsa, never doing any action that harms others, and positively doing whatever one can to relieve others from difficulties and suffering. And then we have the fifth and final category, and these aren't absolute established definitions of Dharma. These are my own categorizations, but I think it helps. It makes sense. That would be called the moksha dharma, which means the spiritual dharma, the spiritual dimension of life. And some will practice that through worship, and some will follow through knowledge, acquiring enlightenment, as the Buddhists teach, and Jains, and certain branches of Hindus as well. So two paths towards spiritual perfection, which are knowledge, the path of knowledge, and the path of devotion to the deity, worshipping the supreme deity. And then, of course, there are many, many people who have no interest in religion and spirituality at all, who don't see it as a necessary or even desirable part of their lives. But the idea is, and if we take the path of knowledge, how does one gain that enlightened knowledge, the knowledge of the true self, the whole knowledge of the higher reality, which we may or may not believe in? But if one does, that there is a spiritual truth, how does one find that spiritual truth? And many of the teachings, most of the teachings, Shankaracharya, Shaiva Siddhanta, Kashmir Shaivism, etc., they teach that the knowledge of the enlightening knowledge, the spiritual knowledge, the absolute wisdom is already within yourself. You already have that knowledge. You already have that enlightenment, but it's covered over by what the Shaiva Siddhanta speaks of, South Indian Shaivism, as mala, which means dirt, contamination. And that contamination is selfishness, greed, egotism, pride, animosity, hatred. All these things that shroud our true spiritual identity, so that the process of acquiring knowledge is not reading many books, if only it were that easy. It is looking for the knowledge within oneself by clearing oneself, making oneself free of all these tendencies within ourselves that obscure our true humanity. So in a sense, the path of knowledge, and Shankaracharya, a great teacher of Indian spiritual wisdom, makes it very clear that that knowledge will come only when the tendencies towards greed, selfishness are gradually removed, just as a covering of a dirty lamp, soot is removed and then it shines forth. So in the same way, our spiritual identity shines forth. The path of knowledge, therefore, the path of spiritual knowledge, be it Buddhist, Jain, Hindu, is the same as the Sanatana Dharma. The Sanatana Dharma, it isn't just a material conception of humanism, it is also deeply spiritual. And then if we come to worship as well, if those who are devotionally inclined, how does one worship the deity? There's offerings that can be performed, pujas in temples, prayers that can be recited, etc. But I've drawn to a passage I found in the Shiva Puran, which is a text about Shaivism, which speaks of Shivaradhana, which is the worship of Shiva. And what it says there is that the best way to worship Shiva, the most effective, desirable devotional practice, is service to other human beings, or to service to all living beings, actually. And he says in those verses, just as a father is pleased when his children or grandchildren are made happy, so if you want to please the deity, then rituals are okay, recitations of mantras is okay, but the most potent, effective means of bhakti, of devotion, is to do whatever one can to serve and help other living beings. Again, bhakti, the way of devotion, the moksha dharma, rests upon the Sanatana Dharma, those verses I was, acts of kindness, acts of goodwill, gradually removing the self-centeredness from one's heart and looking towards the well-being of other people. These are humanist activities. That's what it means to be fully human, but they are also deeply spiritual activities, and they are in fact the essence, the heart of spirituality. And so Swami Vivekananda, a great teacher of Indian religion who lived over 100 years ago, he makes a remarkable statement. He says that one may not have any interest in God, one may have never read a single word of sacred text, one may be wholly disinterested in religion and spirituality, but such a person is closer, further along the spiritual path, if that person is kind, compassionate, and giving. In other words, more than the person who goes to the temple every day and makes a flower offering, more spiritual, more deeply involved in the spiritual progression that that person doesn't believe in particularly, than one who does all the rituals, recites all the mantras, does all the trappings of what is conventionally understood as religion. But just that kindness, humanity is in fact the most spiritual of all things. So when we talk about Dharma, and I think in every sense, the Sanatana Dharma that is defined in some of those verses there, kindness, ahimsa, goodwill, charity, serving others, that is the very essence of what Dharma is. We may read in sacred texts, or if you read Manusmriti, you'll find things in there that you won't agree with, things on caste, on gender, etc. Then set it aside because it contravenes the Sanatana Dharma. Likewise, ritual life is fine, but if ritual is not accompanied by the purity of the Sanatana Dharma, then the rituals have no value at all. I'll finish off now, but there's a story that's told in the Mahabharata which illustrates the point, and it's the story of the golden mongoose. It describes how after the battle at Kurukshetra in the Mahabharata, Yudhishthira, being fearful that his actions there have been sinful, performs a great Vedic yajna, huge, elaborate, ritualistic ceremony, and offerings are made, many priests, etc. All the rules are adhered to. And at the end of the ceremony, they see running across the arena, rolling in it, a mongoose whose half side is golden. And they asked the creature, which can apparently speak, how did you come to be like that? And he said, I was in a land where food was short, and a family there had just enough food to feed themselves, but a man came begging, asking for something to keep him from starvation. And despite their own difficulties, they gave their food away to that hungry man. And he said, some of the grains of that food fell onto my side, which turned golden. Since then, I've been looking for a way to turn my whole body golden. And even though I've rolled in this sacrificial arena, it hasn't happened. The conclusion, therefore, is that the simple act of kindness, of giving food to a person, had far more religious and spiritual potency than this great, huge, elaborate ritual that Yudhishthira had commissioned. So, if I can, I'll stop there. Thank you. That's my understanding of Dharma, and why I'm so I feel indebted to all of you. You know, Hanuman Dass said some very nice words about me beforehand, but it's what you're doing which is the real work. And so you're all on a higher level than I am, limited in what I can actually do. So thank you, and namaste to all of you.
Namaste. Thank you, Nick, for that beautiful talk. And I really appreciate it, knowing as your health hasn't been the best in recent time, that you're still coming out and sharing that with us. I think it's really a wonderful opportunity for all of us to kind of listen to you and to be present with you. I want to open it up a little bit, if it's okay, Nick, just for a few questions, if anybody's got any. And by the way, feel free to ask whatever you like. Nick is very approachable, and kind of ask anything that comes to your mind, if anybody's got one. Anybody?
I do have one. It's a little bit beyond this initial scope, but I think you were leading to it, Nick, when you introduced your fifth conception of the moksha dharma. And there are four ultimate pursuits of life within Sanatana Dharma. And you mentioned one of them is dharma and the other one is moksha. But many have often thought that there is a difficulty in trying to understand how they all relate together. And sometimes following dharma has been thought to be to lose sight of moksha, and similarly, people going off into the wilderness seeking enlightenment has been thought to abandon various obligations. It seems to me that by introducing this fifth category, that you're trying to bridge that gap. And one of Hanuman Dass's favorite stories that we use all the time in Go Dharmic, the story of Yudhishthira and the dog. The reason that the Pandava brothers are climbing that mountain at the end there is typically thought to be a pursuit of moksha. And obviously they fall away, but then there's a story. The dog starts following the King Yudhishthira, who's renounced everything. He's renounced his life, possibly even renounced Dharma. But the dog itself is Dharma, we find out. So I'm just curious to see what your understanding of that is, and maybe to say a little bit more about that fifth category. Sorry, it's quite a little bit more of a technical question, but I think this is the time because you're here with us, Nick.
No, you refer there to the four Purusharthas, which are given quite early texts. I found it in the Vishnu Puran, which is quite an early one, which the four legitimate goals for human beings to pursue in life, and they may seem to be contradictory to each other. They are dharma, artha, karma, and then moksha. Dharma, as we've discussed, artha is gaining wealth and prosperity, and karma is the fulfillment of our desires and pleasure, whereas moksha is the spiritual dimension of life. In the Gita, Krishna makes an interesting statement in the 7th chapter. I think it is dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshava, which means I am karma, I am pleasure, I am desire, but only dharma aviruddha, when it doesn't contradict dharma. So what I would say about that is, and what I've written about that is, that karma and artha become legitimate goals of human life only when they are moderated, regulated by dharma. So, for example, one might want to pursue artha and gain prosperity, but that should not be done at the expense of suffering of others, just as we've seen in the capitalist system and the employment of low-wage workers. You become wealthy. Yes, you pursue artha. It's a legitimate goal, but it's dharma aviruddha. It contravenes dharma because it's harmful to others. So dharma is the regulating factor that makes karma, pleasure in life. Everybody wants pleasure in life. That's a legitimate goal. Artha, prosperity, the pursuit of prosperity, that's a legitimate goal, but only in as much as they do not contravene the precepts of dharma that we've got. Dharma renders karma and artha legitimate. With regard to the spiritual one, moksha, what I've tried to explain, and what the Bhagavad Gita again also says, is that one should remain active in society. One should fulfill all of one's duties in society, but the renunciation which you referred to takes place within the mind. And trying to think of the verse. Yes, he says, well, you know, lokasangraham evapi sampasyan kartamarhasi. You ought to work, kartamarhasi, but lokasangraham evapi sampasyan. Considering the well-being of the world, you should remain active in the world. So the Bhagavad Gita is a text with this idea of karma yoga, where it doesn't favor physical renunciation of the world. The monastic or the mendicant lifestyle. It says remain active in the world, lokasangraham, for the welfare of the world. You can't neglect the people in the world, but your renunciation must be internal, within the heart, without being selfishly desirous. Continue to be active in society for the good of all, but you renounce the fruits of your action. Don't become desirous. So he's saying that renunciation is essentially a matter of your consciousness rather than your physical domain. And he even says that there may be people who've become renunciates, but still their hearts are filled with anger, envy, and desire. And he says, because that mityachara hasojite, that's false renunciation. Real renunciation is within the heart, and that's what the Gita answers that particular point, I think.
That's great, and I think that was a wonderful question, Thomas. Really nice. Has anybody else got anything they'd like to ask? So Martin maybe had something.
I just want to give my, I mean, not, I want to ask, I got an opportunity to meet Nick when he was in Kerala, and we were developing the library. So Nick, this is one of my, closest to my heart, this library, because the way we developed, also the way you have, given us the direction or the guidance, it was amazing. And I still remember that day. And your presence truly inspires me. I got a lot of questions answer on that day. I've asked a lot of questions on that day, and I still remember all these wordings. Is I can still hear your voice and my and because I wanted to renounce this this materialistic word and all, and he told me that this is not the way. You have to be in this world, like you mentioned. So this wisdom I took from you, and it gave me confidence that with the earth we can do the right dharma. Without earth, there is gonna be difficult to do right dharma. There will a lot of adharma if we do not do the right thing with the earth, and the right earning should be there, and because that makes your mind, that makes you human. So yeah, thank you so much for your session. I want that, honestly speaking, if you ask me, I want to have your sessions regularly. I mean, if your time and your health permits. It is really inspiring. I can see my teammates were listening very curiously. There is a huge gap and vacuum, honestly speaking, on the spiritual side, spiritual understanding. So thank you so much for your session, Nick.
Yeah, I remember that day very well as well. It was a very moving occasion. It was a particular school in Vizhinjam in South India, very poor children, and we were able to open a library. I'd been supporting that individually. Then Go Dharmic got involved and transformed the lives of those children. I would like to be more involved with Go Dharmic activities, but as Hanuman Dass said, my health is failing at the moment. I'm really struggling. When we went to Kerala, that was just before I had a setback with my health, and so it's a little difficult for me. And ask your forgiveness that I don't participate more fully in the Go Dharmic activities, but it is a bit of a struggle at the moment. I'm going to go and have a lie down in a minute and a glass of water.
I think we're going to stop there unless anybody's just got one last question they'd like to ask. I'll probably just give them one quick question if anybody's got before we start.
Yeah, can I ask?
Oh, sure.
Thank you for the wonderful talk. I just had a quick question. The question is, I agree with pretty much everything you said, but then the problem is Maya is so strong. How do, by interacting, you know, with the society around us, Maya does effectively, it's very hard for 99.999% of us to not be affected by Maya. So by, you know, you said, you know, you shouldn't just go to a forest, etc. And, you know, Krishna says that in the Gita, but then you're forgetting that was specifically to Arjun, because if Arjun did that, then the consequences of the Kauravas, you know, ruling the planet would have been disastrous. Whereas if you look in Bhagavad Mahabharata, in the Uddhav Gita, he says the opposite thing to Uddhav. He says, you go to a forest, you renounce everything. So, I agree, we should do charity and whatever, but is there a way, like, how do we not get affected by Maya, basically? Because, you know, that's, you know, by taking, you know, by interacting with society, Maya is very powerful. So what steps can we do that we, you know, we're charitable? Also, the second bit to that is by how should I say this? You said that it's higher than Dharma by doing charity. So Krishna said in the Gita that, you know, by interacting with the impersonal, you know, Brahm or Shakti, one goes there for, you know, millions and millions of years, but eventually come back. Whereas if one interacts with the personal form, you know, they go to the Lord forever. So can you explain, you know, that? So I'm going to turn off my video, but I'm still listening. Just I have to get into the car. I'm literally waiting for a ride that just got here. Bye, I'm listening.
Okay. With regard to how do we avoid difficulty, it's difficult because, and it's a gradual process. It's not that it happens immediately like a flash of lightning. It's just that one becomes a little bit more committed to the Dharma day by day, week by week, month by month. Gita says Shanai Shanayar. One does it gradually, day by day. And he also says Spalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahatobayat. Even a little bit, su alpa, of this dharma helps you along the way. The question of the problems of living in the world, they're very real. And you mentioned striving for artha. Artha is being wealthy. It's two dimensions to it. One is that it can lead to greed on the one hand. On the other hand, money also opens the way to do tremendous good works, as we've seen Go Dharmic has done as well. So artha can go one of two ways there. But while we're living in the world, we don't want to be too harsh on ourselves. Just we try to do a little bit more and a little bit better every day. It's a very long and gradual process. I think that's what I would say.
Thank you so much for the answer. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone. I think we're going to pause it there to give Nick an opportunity to rest as well. He's been speaking for a while and doesn't speak as much as he used to, and travel around. Used to be very, very hectic schedule of speaking all over. Can everybody see me okay, by the way? Am I visible?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Nick, thank you so much for joining. You know, I think there's so many different perspectives that you've shared, but ultimately that universal love, that universal compassion, that Sanatana, eternal for everyone, that we keep reminding of ourselves of what we're here for is, something I take again and again from everything that pours through from you. And, as much and as often as you can and are able to, we just want to be very selfish with your time and, and appreciate you being here. So thank you once again. And we'll be sharing this online soon. So feel free to drop off the line, and we appreciate you blessing us with the chance to do this work. And guys, if Go Dharmic comes from here, it's Nick's love, it's Nick's message, it's Nick's idea of Dharma that we are representing in the world. So feel very honored to be present, to understand this firsthand, and that we have to carry that forward in the world, and really make this a huge presence. But one thing, when we first started in the very early days of Go Dharmic, I would say Nick said to me, look, it doesn't matter if you feed just only one child. Feeding a single child is like feeding the whole universe, in that spiritual view. He said that at the beginning. And, we're always ambitious. We want to do more. Like, we did one event. We want to make it double success. That's what we spent 2 hours talking about today. But still, please do remind yourselves that this first message that Nick shared with me is that even when we're feeding that one child, we feed that child like the universe. And do that with a big smile and bliss and happiness, to serve as Hanuman served in that way. I think it's very lucky, very transformational, very blessed to do what we're doing and to be in this position. And we have the highest lens of understanding, I believe, that I've come across, is this, that Sanatana is universal, beyond differences, and for all living beings we should act. And so thank you to everyone who's joining. Sorry if anybody had any questions or thoughts that they wanted to share. We'll keep it for another time, or you can write to us, and we'll try and kind of get Nick to share those ideas in the future. But take care, everybody, and have a lovely weekend. Ram Ram. Thank you, Nick. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nicholas. Ram Ram.